For a hard-earned thirst, you need a big cold beer. And that beer is Musos, Melbourne Musos. You can get it putting the cat into a spin. You can get it answering questions on a Friday Facechook Live and then putting it onto Channel 31 like I'm doing now. You can get it any old how. As a matter of fact, I've got it now. So for a hard-earned thirst, you need a big cold beer. And that beer is Musos, Melbourne Musos.
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1. Tim Howell, that was for you. Impersonated drummer on the Mexican marching powder. Never touch the stuff. I don't even drink and drum. How's that? Even though a hard-earned thirst needs a big cold beer. And the big cold beer is Musos. What you've got to do, because I know that was a joke question, Tim, so I hope you're laughing your ass off. There you go. But what happens, it serves everyone really well if you can count like an auctioneer. Okay, so you've got that 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. You see? 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Bit nasally, Chris. What's going on here? All right, so what we've got is 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and we'll be right back. After this message, hippopotamus, 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 hippopotamus. You see, build it up. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. So now that's an interesting thing when you sort of hop up, you know, sort of thing, a paradiddle rock beat, let's say. I've got popping happening. There you go. And all this sort of business, because what goes on is this goes into the rappers and drum and bass and all that, where you'll get a sample, very much probably Clyde Stubblefield doing Funky Drummer and stuff like that. And then they sample it and they ratchet it up, so it's all, you know, hopped up. So you might have a funky beat, like boom. Get on down. You might have something funky like that, but then all of a sudden, up goes the tempo. Bump. All right, that's enough of that. I'm going to slow down now. Tim Howell, drummer on the Mexican marching powder, the impersonation. I have no clue. I don't touch the stuff. I don't go near it. I'm a bit of a straight arrow. I just like a bear on a Friday. I don't even do any of that midweek unless it's a special occasion. And the only two poisons I have is bear and white wine. The rest of it gets me a little bit into trouble. Just ask Marcus Sasdemoinen with his Finlandia vodka. Ooh, my head. Now, what goes on is I'll jump to Andrew. I'll put him at the head of the queue because, hello Andrew, because it's one of the last questions I got. And you notice that I am playing traditional grip. And the reason it's called traditional grip is because it's well over 1,000 years old. And what goes on with this is that this comes from marching drumming, where you had a drum. I've got my other drum here because this is for Lisa and tuning in a minute. Hello, Lisa Kelly. Oh. Get that back in the... Okay. And what happens is when you've got a marching drum, it's off to the side. You see, it's like that. Now, my usual thing is if you're playing matched grip and you're playing in a pipe band or something like that where, you know, some of the pipe bands are still using the shoulder strap like I used to do in the City of Essendon Brass Band, you're playing up like that. So you'll end up being the hunchback of Drummerland there, you know, that kind of thing if you're using match grip. So many, many millennia ago even, the underhand. You put your hand underneath to create the traditional grip. And that's what goes on there, you see. And that's what goes on. Now, what you also have is, of course, the matched grip. I started with matched grip. And then my old teacher, Harold, I've mentioned him a lot over the last Face Chooks. What goes on is he said, try this now. And I go, yuck. Go back to matched grip, right? So on, back to traditional, yuck, but bit by bit I got it, and now it's my main grip, right? Now, if you're coming up through, like, marching, okay, now there's a bit of a link there because Marcus has asked me about a very wonderful drummer, which I'll get to in a bit, but he started with marching, drumming as well. And what happens is that, I might as well just say the name, Larry Mullen Jr. of U2, you see. And when you see him play, especially when he comes out on stage and does a marching beat and all that for some of the tunes, traditional grip, you see. But the funny thing about it is when you're actually doing, say, things like Latin music, you've got to do the rim click, so you... So what happens there is that, you know, if you're playing a bossa nova or anything like that, you're flipping around to match grip anyway. So you tend to learn to do both. Now, there's always those arguments about, you know, which one's better and all of that sort of stuff. And I've seen people with fairly hard opinions and all of that sort of stuff. I do both, but I'm a traditional guy because of the way that I grew up. And last week I mentioned a thing called I'm a child of my time, you see. And what happens is when I started doing all the marching and all the rudiments and stuff, I had a shoulder strap. So it was off to the side and traditional was the only way you could play it. But at that same time, you started to get the harnesses being developed. So you'd get basically, you know, the hooks over your shoulder and the marching drum would be out flat. And now you see just about everybody playing match grip out the front now. So it's not one or the other or anything like that. It's a funny kind of thing. I don't get into arguments with it because I use both, you see, and for different purposes. Most of last year I was using match grip sort of thing, and now I'm back to traditional grip sort of thing for the things that I do because there's a lot more finesse with some of the material that I'm doing now and all that with cartoon music and things like that. So there you go. Now, Andrew, that's that for you.